All right, then. It is one past. We have 64 people. Welcome, everyone. Mitchell, good to see you again. And we'll crack on. So today's session is very laid back. Over the past, wow, it's been 9 weeks now. We've really delved into the almost science of what it means to write prompts and use tools such as large language models. And we've really delved into the intricacies and the nuances that come with using these generative AI tools well. But now we're actually going to be looking at the multiverse, if you want to make that Marvel reference, of the plethora of large language models that are out there for us to use in terms of in our personal lives, in our work lives. And so this is something which, we've covered quite a few of the technologies that we've seen beforehand, but as you all may know, and for those people who are just joining us, welcome. There's a very much a push here for us to at Coding with Codex to try and make sure that you guys know where you can access free resources and don't have to spend a penny, because financial investment shouldn't be a barrier to entry when it comes to using generative AI tools in your personal and professional work lives. So we're going to go through a few points. We're going to go do a couple of exercises. It's going to be very interactive. And at the end, what we're going to be doing is, as we're nearing the end of this course, we're actually going to be opening up the floor to a group conversation where Midhat, who's in the chat, will come off mute, as long as myself, and we'll facilitate a group conversation. As I know quite a few of you have been emailing me over the past few weeks with several questions, but instead of us just giving our thoughts, we'd like to open it up to the wider group. Thumbs up if that sounds good. Thumbs down if that sounds a bit confusing. And thumbs in the middle if you're like, yeah, we'll see how it goes. Perfect. Brian, thank you very much for the thumbs up. Wicked. Thank you, Stacey. Ryan. Perfect. All right, let's crack on then. So, alternatives to ChatGPT. ChatGPT is somewhat the darling of large language models. Well, it was, but this is slow. This is, fastly. No, this is changing fast. And so it's something which, when it first came out, it took the world by storm. You had college students, or as we say in the UK, university students who were completing their assignments within an hour and actually bringing the service down, and it very much dominated the space. However, now there very much exists a multiverse of tools and whatnot. So let's have a look at some of those alternatives and actually focus on why will we even bother looking at them. Now, some of these tools we have seen in previous weeks, so we won't spend too long on them, but some of them will be new and some of them you may not have heard of. So moving first, Microsoft Bing. Can I get a thumbs up if everyone's heard about Bing's tools? Bing's like integration with ChatGPT. Thumbs up. I can see Paul smiling over there. Make sure a thumbs up. Thank you much, Brian. Yeah. So to give some context as to why did Microsoft Bing, and I'll just pull myself over to the other screen. So if you head into bing.com, you can actually see that there's an accessible version of Copilot, which is quite commonly used for free. And the reason why that exists is because Microsoft are part owners of OpenAI. Now, essentially what that means is when we look at this and we want to figure out what powers this, well, we know that Microsoft owns part of OpenAI, therefore it's ChatGPT. And this is a really great way to gain access to ChatGPT 4 or other various aspects of large language models for free. Now, it is pretty cool in terms of where we have this little banner at the bottom. We have this slider where we can actually say more creative, more balanced, and more precise. And this allows us to, I mean, those of you who've been here from previous weeks will actually know that this allows us to actually tailor and fine tune the type of response we're going to be getting. And that can be very, very helpful when it comes to, I mean, last week we looked at copywriting, for example, or we looked at, we looked at writing SEO, optimization, tags and whatnot. So let's say for the former, if you want to write a blog, or it has to be creative nature, more creative, that's perfectly, it's perfect. It's right up our street. Want to be more precise, then having that tool of SEO generation, so to speak, that's when it may come into play. Does that make sense? Thumbs up if it does, thumbs down if it doesn't. Yeah, perfect. All right then. So we've already been on this. So in this case, we actually want to, like I said, it's going to be very interactive. So Midhat's going to be putting in the link to Bing. It's very simple, bing.com. And I would actually like for you guys to take either of the two tasks. What I'll do in a second, I'll run through how you can access the image generator. Again, we've previously experienced this in our very first session when we looked at DALL-E, but actually I want you to have a go with the chat mode, explore it. So you can give it certain instructions. For example, you could ask it, simple queries that we've seen on Perplexity AI, where it's researching, let's say, car sales in South California. or you could ask for it to be, see how far it goes down the rabbit hole in terms of creative. So maybe ask it to generate you a poem, or maybe ask for it to generate you a short story. Those of you with young children, maybe it can create a bedtime story for you for tonight. You never know. So if you can try to do that, and then put a thumbs up once you've done that, and also share what you put into large language model and what you got back. And for those of you who want to actually test out generating an image, what we can do here is, oh, well, it's slightly changed. So if we head to, on the top right hand corner, you can see designer. I'll zoom in there, and we click designer, and then voila, test your imagination, push it to the limits, and let's see what you can come up with. So spend a few minutes doing that, and then we'll move on to the next one. And any questions or queries, please do feel free to pop it in the chat. If anyone's managed to generate anything, it doesn't matter what it is or whatever prerogative you had when it came to using the tool, but please do share it in the chat so we can also see, and people who may be struggling can also get some inspiration of what they can actually create. Hey, Rob, great to see you. Thanks for joining. So please do share what you generate in the chat. If it's an image, unfortunately, we can't share that in chat. However, actually, unless you can share images in Zoom chat, let me check. Ooh, no, unfortunately, you can't. But you can definitely email it into us at the end, and we'd love to see it. So spend another minute just going over that. Of course, Miranda. So the way you can adjust creativity to precision is you should see this where you have a co-pilot, and then at the bottom, so underneath this carousel, you'll see choose the conversation style where it says more creative, more balanced, more precise.
I don't see, excuse me, I don't see that screen when I use the link. I go straight into the Ask Me Anything screen.
Ask you anything screen. Okay. So there's a couple. So this is one of the drawbacks for Bing's tool in terms of it doesn't have what we call entry points. It doesn't have consistent entry points for different users. So we've actually discovered one of the drawbacks. What you can do is if you scroll up just above your message, Miranda, you'll see where Midhat shared this specific link that will take you to this page. So if you click that, you should actually end up on this page where you can see the slider. Hope that helps.
I'll try again. I ended up on the Ask Me Anything page though.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, the same
I
thing
think
happened
there's a
to me.
restriction because of the company laptop, I guess. We don't see, yeah, even I don't see that Copilot GPTs on the side. It's just the Copilot, and there's no designer, vacation planner, or fitness trainer, cooking assistant that you are seeing.
Perfect. Okay, that's really interesting. So even there we have.
Hi, this is Jennifer. I landed on the Ask Me Anything screen, but if you scroll up above the Ask Me Anything box, you'll get the choose the conversation style. I landed on the same page you did.
Wonderful. Thank you very, very much, Jennifer. Thank you very, very much, Jennifer. To those people who can't access this right now, please do remember that these sessions are recorded. And so you can always come back on your own personal device. We upload the sessions to YouTube, so they're very accessible to watch back. And you can always come back to this on a personal device and try it out later. But I think if people who have managed to have access to Bing and Bing's Copilot, if you do want to share what you have in the chat, I think Mitchell, you created an image where you asked, can you create a cartoon style photo with a cat and a dog having a playful sword fight and a dragon as a judge? Oh, Mitchell, if you could email that to me at the end, I'd be really curious to see what it generated. That'd be pretty cool. So if you can send that over.
I'll definitely email it to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's fun.
Paul, you sent oh wow, that's a lengthy. That's a That's a lengthy joke. I tell you what, for the sake of time, Paul, again, if you can email that over to me with a recap, and I'll share that with the group at the in tomorrow's thingy. And T Smith 358 says that they have a Copilot listing spicy chicken recipes. That's pretty cool. And that's pretty useful as well, which is a great tip. Cool. So if everyone's happy, we'll move on. If I get a thumbs up, if everyone's happy to move on. Thumbs down if you need 1 or 2 more minutes. And then if there's an overwhelming thumbs up, we will move on to the next tool. Perfect. Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Shangming. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Brian. All right, perfect. Looks like people are ready to move on. So going back through sort of the key points around Microsoft being that we do know it's powered by ChatGPT 4. And this is because, again, Microsoft owns part of OpenAI, which is the foundation that developed the GPTs, sort of thing. Now, it's good because, I mean, similar to, different to tools like specifically ChatGPT 3.5, it's actually linked to the internet, which is great. But we also, we've already seen tools like that where we can already leverage and that are slightly a bit better when it comes to actually returning us information. So that takes us nicely onto our favorite tool that we've used previously, Meets Perplexity.ai. Now, I won't spend too much time on this, and we'll skip over the exercises with Perplexity, mostly because we have a whole session where we generated meeting agendas, we did market research, and other plethora of different tasks for us. So I don't want to be almost going back to this, but again, as a reminder of what Perplexity AI does have the capabilities of doing is that its main USP is the fact that it can deep dive into questions that you may have. And such, that allows us to enter very simple prompts. I mean, as we've previously seen, as we're greeted by this sort of dialog box, and we ask, what are, should we say, who's got a question for us to ask? Actually, I like crowdsourcing these questions. A research question that we want to push out. Who's happy to share a research question? So what are the bakery names that are not in use? Let's do that. So give me bakery names that aren't in use in London. I'll be specific on location just to narrow down. So as we can see here, we've not only have the sources clearly laid out and presented to us in terms of where we should, where it's pulled the information. We have 1, 2, 3, and then a further 2, so 5. But then we also have the list of them alongside the references. So you can see 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it really does help when it comes to laying out information. And Perplexity is great because whenever we want to actually prompt on the ability to interact with the platform and actually talk to it like it's an individual, we can just click on the this little button which adds on the Copilot. And it's a processing. It is limited to 5 searches per day, but it's a great little tool for us to use. Does that sound good? Make sense? Thumbs up if it did, thumbs down if it didn't. Perfect. Lisa, can you not Lisa, is that a shared problem or is that just for Lisa? Can people see my screen? Thumbs up if you can. Yep, I can see some nods. Okay, Lisa, if you want to just message Midhat, and I'm sure he'll be able to help you troubleshoot the problem. So yeah, perfect. We'll keep moving on. So again, we've had these, we've experienced when you use Perplexity AI for conversations and you turn on that Copilot method and Copilot function, but also at the same time when we use the multimodal search exploration tool. It's a bit of a mouthful. Well, we've done that research piece, but we've also we've also utilized it to generate us meeting agendas and whatnot, and it is very, very helpful. So this is something to bear in mind. And Perplexity AI is sort of now my go-to. I mean, for context, my dad was looking for a welder in a region of the UK called Essex. Spent about half an hour going through the yellow pages, showed him this tool, and now he's never looked back. So even for the most smallest of tasks, when it comes to researching, this can be very, very beneficial. So moving on. Now, Claude is something which I think a few of you have actually emailed me in about in regards to taking a look at. And one thing which is very much a case. It's been very much a temperamental tool that's existed in the space of AI. Now, it's created by a company called Anthropic, and essentially it uses this natural language technique that hasn't really been seen in other large language models, and particularly it's not got a strong bias towards English, and instead it actually encapsulates conversations from 95 countries. So that already shows us how, I know previously we've had conversations about, you know, oh, thank you very much, Mitchell. I know previously we've had conversations about, you know, the biases that large language models have, but the reason why Claude really took something, really took the center stage and actually appeared as a large language model that people should really pay attention to was because of that breadth of inclusivity. And so that actually meant that it was inherently assumed to be more accessible than, at the time, ChatGPT, Gemini, which formerly known as Bard, and a bunch of other tools. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of people really love it. And it is great. It's a great tool. So what's going to happen is Midhat's going to share it, share Claude in the chat. I'll also share it here. If you want to access it on your own, you can just type claude.ai. And as you can see, you're taken to this login. So you're more than welcome to jump in. I think in the interest of time, what we're going to do is I will show the I'll stop here so you can have a look at the different tasks that you can do. But I think we're going to skip over Claude just for this thing because the next one is something that I'm really excited about to show you guys. And I don't think many people have actually heard of it before. But for people watching the recording, or individually, if you want to actually take a break from these sessions and actually focus on these tasks, so you can engage with conversation complexity tests, you know, for example, initiate some conversation and then gradually over time increase the complexity of your queries. Again, that sense of layering through conversation and very much testing to see how true to life can Claude be as a tool. And then also file summarization. So that can be actually uploading a PDF and asking to summarize, give me a TLDR of, let's say, a PDF. However, if just to stress, please do not put private or personal information into these large language models. I know we covered that a few weeks ago, but just a reminder, whenever interacting with these tools, we should make sure that no personal information is given. Wonderful. And just to go over one of the cons and the drawbacks of Claude is that it's not linked to the internet. And so this is something which, again, we just have to bear in mind. And definitely when we're doing sort of a pros and cons list is one thing that may actually hinder us if we're not, if we don't have all the context and contextual information to hand to feed into it. Move on. So could I get a show of hands if anyone's heard of the company called Hugging Face? Thumbs up if you have, thumbs down if you haven't. I can see some head shaking. No, Rob saying no. Frank has. Perfect. Okay. That's one more person than expected. No. Paul hasn't. Les hasn't. Okay, Brian. Okay, perfect. Well, Hugging Face is known as the what's the best way to say it? The data Wikipedia, almost, if you have it. They're a massive company and they very much propel the field of data science and data analytics. Now, what came out a while ago was something called Hugging Chat. Now, Hugging Chat is a open source tool for large language models. And Frank is right, they also allow you to share and create and develop large language models. And this is something which is very much hailed as the open source alternative to these paid models. And it's very important. The reason why I wanted to get onto this quite quickly was because I think this is something that needs to be mentioned in regards to sort of the sphere of AI tools, and that there's a plethora of paid tools in which individuals, rightly so, are trying to monetize their hard work. But there is also a very valiant force of individuals who are pioneering the open source space. Now, for those of you who don't know what open source means, that just means that anyone can contribute and anyone can utilize. And it's very much a free product that is maintained and upheld by the community. And so essentially, if you're in these two minds about, should I actually try and get a paid version of a tool, or should I, you know, stick to, let's say, the freemium versions of sort of these tools such as ChatGPT and I don't know if Gemini have actually introduced a paid model and whatnot, but let's take ChatGPT for this instance. It's something which I really, really encourage everyone to have a look into the multiverse for these free and open source tools. Now, the drawback to these tools is the fact that they are community driven. So that means that they're not necessarily going to be the quickest to be updated, but they're really great alternatives when you're just trying to get a scope and lay of the land when it comes to what works for you and what may suit your personal or professional workflow best. So moving into this, we've got two tasks. And so if everyone can actually click the link that Midhat has sent in the chat. Now, just as a reminder, I believe, I can't remember what it says, but if you, every other place to say, it should give you two options, either log in or continue as a guest. Please feel free to continue as a guest. You do not need to log in for this part of the session. And already we can see some examples similar to what we may see on ChatGPT Premium, where, or even, excuse me, the free version of ChatGPT, where it gives some examples of what we can create using this large language model. But here we have two tasks in terms of one, which is the conversation variety test. Again, try and throw sort of a modeled mix of things at the large language model. So for example, you can initiate a conversation on crafting a blog post and then asking it to generate you a joke out of that, alongside with making a website that talks about the joke or something as such. And sort of the objective here is to assess the versatility of Hugging Chat and how does it handle various conversation types. So that's one thing. The second task, bear in mind you only have to pick one for this, or you can do both. It's completely up to you. The second point is to the web access toggle exploration. So as we can see here on the bottom, we have this little toggle here where we can click to search the web. Now, what that means is that if it's turned off, it's not connected to the internet. If it's turned on, it is. Very simple. And here we can actually then ask it to grab us some information from online, and then we can try and get it to interpret that and feed it back to us. So we'll take I'll stop talking here, and we'll take about 2 to 3 minutes or a bit longer if needed for you guys to get involved and have a go. Any questions, please do feel free to put it in the chat, or do feel free to come off mute.
First, what are the different, sorry, Himanshu here. What are the different models and how do we use them?
So is that on the right-hand side, current model?
Yeah, on the left-hand side, bottom left-hand side.
So again, what it means by model in terms of the type of data and information that it was trained on. So something in which, what's it called? Something in which we have to contend with is how there's going to be certain data sets or certain, I'm trying to think the most cleanest way to explain this. Bear with me, it's been a long day. A lot of talking today. So in essence, each model will have its own specific benefits. So one may be better trained in medical data, for example, and I'm just talking very holistic here, very, very high level. Let's say one is better at being trained in medical data and medical information to, let's say you were to, this again, I do not recommend people doing this. Please go see your GP or doctor if you have a medical ailment. But let's say you wanted to test to see, oh, I have these symptoms. What do you perceive this? What do you perceive the diagnosis to be? However, something else may be more proficient at, let's say, construction-based questions in terms of like civil engineering and that sort of stuff. So this is where you can kind of play around with things. And it also allows people to play around with their own models in a very clean and user-friendly way. I hope that made sense. If not, please let me know and I can.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, and we'll give it 2 more minutes. Need to fix something. Please do feel free to share what you've learned from Hugging Chat, if any insights, any perspectives. Do you like it? Do you not like it? So Lana, if you head to huggingface.co directly, it should provide you, yeah, you should be able to reach this. Mitchell, you're really onto your jokes, aren't you? I think that's pretty funny, actually. What happens when a truck full of marshmallows gets into an accident? The road becomes a sticky situation. I like that. I'm definitely gonna try that on in the group. We have our all hands meeting afterwards. So you know what, Mitchell, I will open with that question.
Yeah.
And I will let you
As-
know how many eyes roll at me from my team afterwards.
Yeah,
And
please do. Some of the other jokes weren't as good, but that one I thought was pretty spicy.
100%. Perfect. Well, Midhat, you who's going to be joining that call afterwards, please don't give it away that I'm going to be opening up with that joke. And ruin the surprise for the rest of the team. All right then. Let's I think we're getting some really cool stuff. If we've got any questions, what does it affect if it has access to the web or not? So Miranda, actually no, I'll leave it. If people want an answer to Miranda's question about how does having access to the web affect it, please do read Midhat's answer to give a quick summary about it. Essentially, it means that it can get rid of the data. So for example, let's say this large language model that we can see, which is on the right-hand side, current model, and a Mixtral 8 XB instruct version 0.1. It may not have the relevant information. So for example, what was the main highlights of the UK budget that came out yesterday? Because this model was trained 2 months ago, it doesn't have relevant information, but as soon as you link it to the web, it will have the capabilities to actually search in real time and get that information back. So I hope that makes sense. All right, is everyone ready to move on? Thumbs up if you are, thumbs down if you're not. See thumbs up, perfect. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Mitchell. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Stacey. Thank you, Frank. Wonderful. Wonderful. So Pi is something that's quite interesting. We're not going to go through this because I think the last 15 minutes we wanted to open up to a broader conversation in the community, in the group. But I wanted to highlight this large language model for the reasons of the aspects of what AI can do for good. So there's a term called tech for good that is very much prominent in terms of you see a lot of corporate and you see a lot of initiatives. I mean, we at Code and Codex, we're a tech for good organization, we're also known as an impact startup. And that's where our main focus is actually by improving individuals' lives and actually trying to make a difference in a positive way, not just necessarily for a commercial gain. And so, though I want to stress very, very clearly that though AI is in a position where now we're seeing tools such as Pi, where in which you can almost treat it as a which some people hail it as a innovation within the medical mental health field and medical tool. I want to stress the fact that there is nothing that comes close to talking with a professional. So these tools can be almost an additive in terms of in our daily lives, whether that be spiritual, religious, maybe just mental health, well-being and whatnot. There are tools in the periphery that provide this support for us. At the same time, though, Pi indicates a change in the field of tech, where in which we're starting to see not only are processes being automated, but we're having AI agents that serve very critical fields in our society and particularly in our daily lives that would have typically never been engaged with unless it were human. And so it's something that I wanted to highlight. We do have some tasks here, but at the same time, I want to skip over it. But it's something which oh, sorry, Sherry says she loves this. That's great to hear. I thought I was going to get some controversy from anyone who's in the medical field. So that's great to hear. But yeah, it's very much something which it's worth checking out. I'll leave this here, but I want to stress be extremely clear if you are going through a point of in your life where you do need to speak, you want to speak to someone about your mental health, please do speak to a professional. Please do speak to someone who is qualified. This can only serve as a small additive if you're already in a mentally stable position. So gloss over here. Do come back to this if you want to have a play around with it afterwards. But this is not a replacement. This is more just an additive tool. Exactly, Sherry. It's part of our toolbox, but it's not the fix for everything. And there's not many cons apart from the gray area of medtech and automation of medtech. But aside from it, you just need a phone number to sign up for, and sometimes it makes occasional speech errors. So we'll keep moving on. So this brings us to the end of the talk content. In a minute, we're going to be going to a more group discussion, similar to that we had to the back end of last week. We've allocated around 15 minutes of time for people to come off mute and put questions in the chat. But the thing that I wanted to very much end on is this notion of the fact that we are seeing an explosion. We're continuing to see an explosion of AI tools across the world, and very much that many people are saying what crypto was hailed as, which is a transition into Web 2.0, which is this sort of like next generation of internet and next generation of tech in our daily lives. We're now seeing AI actually be the proponent for that. And so what that means is that it can actually, for individuals, on our own, in our own lives, it can be very daunting when you look at all these tools and whatnot and figure out what do you want to use, what can be best for a particular skill set. Do you have to keep up with the Jones? Do you have to, keep up with all the new AI tools that come out every single day? If it's a passion of yours, by all means. If you're part of the coding with Codex team, 100%. But apart from that, no. If you find a tool that works with you, it's completely fine and it integrates well with your personal and professional life. Please stick with it, get good at it, and be in a position where in which that becomes your go-to tool and block out the rest of the noise. Many of these tools will continue to be tweaked and improved, but if in the case that AI tool may be pulled down and you've developed a high dependency on it, it's very much a case of coming back to those first principles of what does it mean to interact with generative AI. And next week we'll go over how you can continue to upskill yourself as in the realm of learning languages specifically, but how we can continue to improve ourselves and actually learn more and more. Mitchell, I remember you saying in I think it's session 2 about how we can continue to upskill ourselves in this ever-changing landscape. But taking these first principles, we can actually then apply these to various other generative AI tools, such that though one may come down, it's just a sense of transferring these skills across to another. That was a bit of a lecture in a way, but does that make sense? And do people understand what I mean by don't feel too daunted about the number of AI tools out there? Thumbs up if it makes sense. Thumbs down if you're like, yeah, kind of, but yeah. Perfect. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Mitchell. Wonderful, wonderful. So that brings us to the end of the talk content. We've actually allowed for 15 minutes because last week we went overtime and we don't want to take up your precious lunch breaks or people who are coming off work, as we do have a fair number of people from the UK, which is great to see. We love our fellow Brits just as much as we love you Americans and people from the rest of the world. So this is a point where in which we want sort of to open the floor for questions for people to have a conversation, and we can really spark a group conversation and community and get that collaboration feeling running through. But before we jump into questions, there is something I want to announce. So we are coming to the, next week is the final lesson or final session in our generative AI program. Now, I was having a conversation with the senior leader at COA yesterday about what's next for the team and what's next for you guys. And we were having a bit of a back and forth in terms of how can we continue to provide for you guys afterwards. Now, something which I know a couple of you guys have taken interest in are the fact that, well, it's in our name, Coding with Codex. We teach coding, we teach Python, and we have our Python level 1 program. Now, we'd love to run them in regards to in partnership with COA. So it'd be same time, we take a break after the end of this course, and then we'd love to start up with Python sessions with you guys, along with offering it to the wider community. But we need to know that there's enough demand there. So Midhat's going to share a link into the chat. If you guys can just pop down your first name, email, and whether you're interested or not, that gives us some leverage to go back to COA and say, hey guys, there is a demand for this. Can we please put these sessions on? Again, they'll be completely free of charge, but it's where you can learn how to code if you'd like. So tell you what, I'll put I think Minhat's slightly taken up, but yeah, whilst that is being shared, I'll just pull that up for myself, from my end, and just share it. So this link, which I'm about to share so thank you very much, Midhat, for sharing that. But yeah, whilst you do that, if that is of interest, if not, no pressure. In the meantime, oh, it's blocked. That's not very helpful, not very professional. Let's try this one. Link, tell you what, I'll try it out myself on my end. I should stop sharing here. Yeah, the links should be working. Kim, if that is something which it may be due to your workplace blocking Google forms, you've had that in the past. If you want to email in at the end, we can definitely get that sorted for you. But now let's open the floor up. So we've talked a lot. Well, myself and Midhat have talked a lot over the past few weeks. We definitely want to open up the floor to people's opinions and thoughts around AI. If you have any questions, this is a great time for us to have an extended conversation versus 30 seconds at the end of the session, where in which we have to rush through. So please, by all means, any questions, come off mute. Or actually, if we have quite a few people who want to speak, if you could just raise your hand virtually using Zoom, we'll unmute you and then we'll go from there. So Leilani says, are the images created with Bing Designer royalty free? Midhat, I feel as if you'll know more about this than me.
It's difficult to say. I actually haven't checked their privacy policy. I would say it's up to you to, especially with any AI generation tool, whether it's ChatGPT's DALL-E or whatever it may be. It's always important to check their terms and conditions. I wouldn't be able to tell you for every single model because there's so many out there, but I'm not experienced with Bing myself, so I wouldn't be able to tell you. I can have a look for you and can come back to you on that, but off the top of my head, not too much.
Perfect. Thank you, Midhat. Oh wow, we're getting loads of questions. This is great. So Sherry says, where can I research medical AI career paths? Previously, it was nursing informatics. Is there a new category specific to medical AI? I'm sure this will cause a new flood of AI-based EMRs. So it's quite difficult for us to give an insight into that, Sherry, as we are a British company. So the perspective we have best is if you're based in the UK and part of the National Health Insurance or NHS over here. I can give you that answer if it's relevant. If not, unfortunately, we're not too sure about the US system. But for those people who are in the UK, the NHS Enterprise Program is a great incubator to find medical-based technical projects and whatnot, and entrepreneurial programs where you can get involved with. We have a few partner advisors who actually are in those projects, and there's a great scheme. I'm sure there's AI's popping up everywhere, so I'd honestly just give it a Google. Or you know what, Sherry? Try Perplexity AI. Maybe if you put that question in there, it could actually point you in the right direction. So yeah, let's see how it goes. And so next, Mitchell, who says, you might have mentioned this, but I was noticed when using Copilot on my second response, it suggested 2 of 30 responses. After 30 responses require PMT. Is that for Microsoft Bing, Mitchell?
Yeah, that was for Bing.
Midhat, do you want to take this one?
Right, sorry, I was also answering another question in the chat. Sorry, what's the question?
It's cool. You keep doing that.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
So I've not that we've expected in regards to if you require a sign-in, but just to bear in mind, it more than likely won't keep memory of previous chats. There's a couple different technical ways in which it can, but a lot of times we have to assume that if there's no sign-in, there's no history that's going to be recorded for us. So that's one of the main reasons why sign-in may be relevant.
Got it. Okay.
Good. Any thoughts on Gemini or Bard, Google's chatbot versus Bing? It's very much pitted against the whole notion. And by the way, guys, if you have your opinions and thoughts, please do hit reply on these questions and definitely, share your thoughts. It's very much a case of we want to, as we've been a community that's grown over the past 9 weeks, let's definitely keep that up. But very much a case of, again, going back to almost our first session, as we know, ChatGPT, Gemini. So ChatGPT, which in essence is what Bing is, because it's run in the same sort of tech. It's very great. It's very good for creative writing and that sort of stuff. Versus Gemini, or previously known as Bard, does have is very much synonymous with researching and objective sort of tasks, so to speak. But even then, you have things like Perplexity, and I hope that makes sense. All right. Wow, we have Oh, we have quite a few more questions. So Rob has said, while you're talking about Pi, you briefly mentioned AI and its impact on the spiritual religious realm. As part of my work involves dealing with seminaries, there's been some hesitance in religious education to consider generative AI as a tool for future ministers. Do you know of any AI tools that may be targeted to audiences that are involved with spiritual, theological, or philosophical issues? Great question, Rob. And unfortunately, despite the effort you've been putting in to write that question, nothing that we know that has taken mainstream action. We know several communities that myself and Midhat belong to. So the Islamic communities have been quite hesitant in actually engaging with that. But there's something in which to be said where what the future holds for that, we're not too sure. Definitely seeing developments in regards to the mental health space. And that's something which we know that, I mean, I'm pretty sure Y Combinator has taken a plethora of AI tools that actually target around medtech and mental health particularly. But in regards to the theological aspect, I'm not too sure about that. And that's something which I think we'll start to see small tools, but in terms of widespread usage, that's yet to be seen. All right, then, wow. Any more for any more? Please do feel free to come off mute if anyone has any questions. And we are coming with 3 minutes to the end of the session. So any questions, anything about large language models, please do mention it.
I had a question.
Go for it, Tara.
Yeah, and so one of the things is that with, I've kind of been exclusively using of ChatGPT, and this is very much, appreciate the session of opening my eyes to the fact that there's numerous models out there. But as a result, it's created another question for me, such as, is there any sort of like cross-reference chart that either you or anyone has developed or anyone has found that says, if you're doing this type of questioning or want to do this type of research or ask these types of questions, this is the best model. And included in that was also like, I use it a lot on desktop. Is there a best model that you recommend for mobile? So that's the base of my question.
No, 100%. There are, you know what, I will make a note of that and I'll email it out in our recap. There is a screenshot I can pull up. We have a very primitive version in our first session where we compare the well, at the time, well, it's funny, at the time of when we taught it, it was known as Bard, now it's known as Gemini, versus ChatGPT in regards to see you later, Rob, take care. In regards to the pros and cons. I mean, going very holistically, ChatGPT and which belongs to the Microsoft space is very good at creative writing versus things that are more based on sort of connected to the internet inherently, which is Gemini, formerly known as Bard, is great at objective tasks such as research me X, Y, and Z. But in regards to infographics, that would help. I'll have a dig around for it and I'll share in the email tomorrow, or if I can get around to it today, and hopefully that should be of some benefit, Tara. But great question. Yeah. Oh, and sorry, just a reminder in terms of mobile and desktop, typically there's very little difference between the two. All it is that one is more optimized for a mobile screen, than it was optimized for a desktop screen, but they run off the same premises and same services. So hopefully that should help. Any more for any more? We have a minute left, and this might be the first time we've actually finished on time. But oh, go for it, Georgie.
I have a question, follow up on Tara's question, a bit more technical though, and I'm aware there's already communities online, such as on Reddit, there's a local language model community that will try to make a review of the recent advancements in models and kind of benchmark models against each other for specific tasks. Now, is there a bigger, greater, better place to go to if I'm looking to find, say, this week's best model in summarization, as I've been looking for the past few months for the best models in summarization, and where would I go to kind of be on top of the state of the art in this case?
So just to clarify, in terms of see you later, Frank. Hope you're doing well. In regards to the state of what? I think it's slightly muffled out.
The state of the art in terms of
yeah.
new models coming up and outperforming previous models that have already been tested against a certain like a basic test case scenario that will allow to quantify the performance of a model. So I don't know how far advancements have gone into quantifying the performance and comparing models against each other objectively, but this is essentially the question, like where is the most advancement available in terms of comparing models against each other? Not subjectively in terms of, well, I like it better, but objectively in terms of we tested it 100 times and it performs 95 times better than the rest, something 100%. Like that.
It's so this is one of the contention points of contention when it comes to large language models in regards to actually creating an accessible rubric that will apply to each different ones. Now, on one hand, we do have the number of parameters in which, so number of data points, that's what parameters means in this context, in which a large language model has been trained on. And sometimes people would actually point towards that and saying, well, because something has been given more inherent knowledge, therefore it's going to be better. However, we know that not to necessarily be the case, and there's, pros and cons to each large language model. As of this current point, I mean, when we look at, when we take a step back and zoom out and have a look at timelines, there generative AI has only really been around for, we're coming into about its second or third year of it being in the public consciousness, and people using it every day. So it's very much a thing where there's no inherent rubric that's coming out. I do believe that in the next few years we'll see ways of actually marking and actually pitting against ways to pit against different large language models against each other. But I unfortunately, this is where community engagement and the court of public opinion really comes into hand. So you mentioned Reddit. I think that's a great place to if you're already frequenting and getting started on actually engaging with and trying to figure out what will be the best tool for, let's say, job X. But as we mentioned at the end of that of our end of our talk content, it's not necessarily required for us to find the quote unquote best tool to use, because sometimes that leads us down a rabbit hole where we always think that we have to basically pick up our knowledge base and apply it to a different tool and keep going down that route. And instead, it could be beneficial, depending on whatever you want to use, depending on why you're using the large language model, to actually just double down on, let's say, again, Perplexity AI, because that seems to be working for us. So therefore, we want to keep using it. But I hope that answered your question. Right.
Yes, thank you so much for that, Faz.
Oh, my pleasure, George. My pleasure. Okay, then. Any more for any more? Paul, I know you raised the point at the beginning, so if you want to share that into the chat again, because I made a mental note. I don't want to forget.
Oh, I got my books here. You can see them collecting dust.
Oh, I guess that's because
Uh,
you Kindle, Paul. I hope that's
I
because you become more eco-friendly and move to a Kindle.
Yeah. Is it even a thing now? Is it worth learning?
So coding, is that what your question was? Is it okay? Perfect. So just to reiterate Paul's question at the beginning of the session. So Python, SQL, I think those are the two things that you brought up. Coding in general has been somewhat under fire since the emergence of these large language models. And definitely something at Coding with Codex, I mean, our inherent purpose is to help upskill people and empower people with the tools of coding. That's what we started out with. Now we ventured into other areas. But there's something to be noted in regards to when we went through, for those of you who were here for our session on coding companions, and we actually got ChatGPT to write us, create us a website, you could see that small isolated programs could be written very quickly and very, easily with tools such as large language models. But the problem that arises when using these tools such as Git Copilot, and there's a few other aspects, see you later, Christian, is that when you actually apply these large language models to larger what's it called, larger files, larger repositories is what we call it in the term of programming. This is where things really start to fall apart, and we see that AI though may be great at fixing very specific tools, when it comes to thinking like a programmer, it can't actually plan out architecture. For example, there's a classic question, which, I mean, I've been asked several times, and Midha, I'm not sure if you've been asked in interviews, to create the outline of building a DoorDash or Deliveroo system, and how would you go about doing that, and tell me all the intricacies and nuances that we need to pay attention to when doing such. Now, human developers are great, but unfortunately, AI falls at that point in regards to being able to do something from start to finish, given one prompt. Now, whether this is going to change over the years, we're not too sure, but it's very much in people's confidence. And when I speak to a lot of developers, in particular industry advisors, who, well, they advise us in terms of should we be teaching something, the current sentiment is that it's still very important to learn, because it gives you a framework of thinking that not only can you write code and be able to function, let's say if generative AI was to collapse tomorrow, but also it then actually increases your productivity, not only from, a 10x perspective, but exponentially when you have, what's it called, when you have large language model at your disposal, and things really just, crank up from there. Myself, I code well, unfortunately, it's not been as recent as much recently, but I code quite frequently, and using large language models to help me get from point A to B quicker has been an absolute game changer. But there's been so many instances, and Midhat, I'm sure you can agree, where you post some code into ChatGPT and tell it to fix it for me, and it gives you absolute garbage out. So that's something which we need to bear in mind. I think, Paul, if we have this conversation in 5 years, my answer would be very different. But for right now, it's still very much relevant to learn coding. But check back with us in 5 years' time, and we'll have that conversation again. Perfect. All right then. So guys, it is 10 to 6. Thank you very, very much for attending. Next week will be our final week, so please do make sure that you sign up and you register for that. Attendance will be, or you'll be able to register for next week's session from tomorrow at 12:15 Central Eastern Time. Again, Americans, you have so many time zones, I don't understand. But for people in the UK, that's 5:15 GMT. Americans, hopefully you can work backwards from that in terms of what time that means for you. And so Sarah said we don't either. Have a great week, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend if we don't speak to you then. And yeah, thank you very, very much.